Okay, so this is a representation of the diagram that Tom just finished off with within the DAFNI system. So this shows off all of the NISMOD models, and then all of the, so this is the bottom line of the diagram that Tom just showed off, and everything above that line is sort of hidden behind in DAFNI. So it makes it a lot easier to make use of NISMOD 2 when you're making use of it on DAFNI. So I just wanted to quickly show that off, and we'll start the proper demo on the login page. So you might notice that we don't have any way of registering yet. If you want to register for DAFNI, you have to contact us and we can sign you up. We'll send you a link out so that you can create your own password. So I'll just quickly log into the system using my password. And so that brings you to the homepage of DAFNI, where you can see some of the components that Brian's talked about earlier. On the left there is our data catalog. So in there, I'll go into that briefly, but in there you'll see a fantastic filter and search functionality that makes use of the DCAT metadata schema that we have. And you will be able to, any user can add their own data to the platform that they want. If you want to know any details about how you can add your own data or need a bit more help with that, we have demos and tutorials that explain how to add your own data on our YouTube channel that should hopefully be linked in the chat. So then the next component that we have is the model catalog. So models on DAFNI are supported by a definition file. This definition file contains all of the parameter and data information that is required to run a model on DAFNI. And it just allows us to make the process of using a model on DAFNI for those that aren't experts in the model a little bit easier. So as Brian mentioned earlier, again, models on DAFNI must be Dockerized into a container. Being inside this container, it means that DAFNI doesn't place any restrictions on what tools or languages you have to use in the model. You're completely free to choose whatever tools and languages you want to use, as long as you tell us the inputs, outputs, and the command that you has to be run in order to run your model within that definition file. We can run it and we can explain to users how to configure it. So we have both demos and tutorials on the YouTube channel for how to Dockerize your model, and also how to upload your model to DAFNI. And we also have a documentation website explaining that as well, if you prefer it in text format. So the next component is our workflow catalog, and workflows are how we enable users to make use of the data and the models and run the models on DAFNI. Workflows consist of various different steps that I'll show off a bit later. They allow you to run your model or publish data from your model back into our data catalog, create a visualization from your model, or perform a simple Monte Carlo iteration on your model. And then the final component on this front page is the manage assets component. If you go into this allows you to either share your data and models with the public catalog, which is just every user on DAFNI. So if you share it with there, then everyone who has a login to DAFNI can see your model and data. Or if you'd rather restrict the access a little bit more, you can create a private group and you can curate who has access to that group and which models and data you share within that group. So we have a few different permission levels. One, the most basic is you can see the metadata for a data or model, but you can't actually make use of that data or model, so you can't download it or you can't run it on the system. Next permission level actually allows you to run that model or download the data. Then we go on to granting people edit access, and the final permission level is full-on admin access, which allows you to delete that model if you want. So I'm just going to quickly go into the data catalog. Okay. So down the left-hand side, you can see the filter functionality that I talked about, that we pull out all of these values from the various DCAT metadata fields that are within all of the data sets on DAFNI. Don't need to do that. I'm just going to enter a quick NISMOD search term, and here you can see all of the data packs that NISMOD requires. They've all been loaded onto DAFNI. So these are all of the water model data packs. Then you've got energy transport, energy supply, energy demand data packs. So I'll just briefly go into one of these to show off what the details page looks like. So here you can see all of the metadata that I talked about earlier, and a nice map that shows you the area of the UK or the world that this data set covers. And then an important box on this page is this open access box on the right hand side. This contains all the information that you need to make use of this data set within your model. So we have a handy little button here that will allow you to just copy out exactly what you need for your model definition file in order to tell us that you want to use this data set. So now I'm just going to quickly go over to the model catalog. Again, this is a list of all of the models on DAFNI at the moment. So I'll just search down to just the NISMOD models again. First page just happens to be all of the NISMOD models. So here you can see all of the various different ones. So you've got the digital model, CDCAM, water model, energy demand model, the various different adapters and decision modules that we needed to build. And then I think on the next page, you've got the transport and energy supply and demand models. So I'll just quickly go into the transport model. So again, we have a little bit of metadata on the left-hand side to allow you to explain what your model does. And then on the right-hand side, this is all of the information that we require in the definition file. So a list of all the parameters that your model requires, what type they are, whether you want to provide extra information like minimum and maximum values, whether you want to provide default values. And also we have the option to give a little bit of a description, just if there's a little bit of help that a user might need to know how to put in a value for that parameter. Then we have a list of the various data sets that your model uses as inputs. And again, you can provide defaults to allow people to switch out the data sets if they want to create a new data set and just see how it works with your model. Then all of the information that you need to do to enable someone to do that, you can put in this list. And then the final section here, which hasn't actually been filled in for this model, but this is a list of output files that your model produces. So that should allow people to know how to integrate with your model, because if they know what your model outputs, then they can take that and use it as input for the next model. So this is a really important part of the model definition file. So now I'm just going to go back over to the workflow catalog, and we'll go back into that workflow that I showed off right at the start. So as I said, this is a representation of one of the systems of systems runs of NISMOD that you can have. So you can see in there's 5 different models, and the main ones are the energy model, the transport model, and then the energy transport module that links those two together. So I'll just briefly go into the energy model step and show off the configuration in here. So the first field is just the step name. This is just to allow you to identify what the step does when you're looking at the workflow. So the next field is just for convenience, we show off the model name, but if you want to change the model that you use, click on the change model button, and that will bring up the model catalog. You can search in there and change the model if you wish. I don't need to, so I'm not going to do that. This field allows you to take data from a previous step. So one of the big things about NISMOD too is each of the models feeds their outputs into an input for another model. So here we're taking the outputs from the decision step and making use of it in the energy demand model. So then we get onto the parameters. So depending on the type of parameter that you specify in your definition file, will generate a different type of field to allow you to change it a little bit easier. So if you provide options for one of your text parameters, then we'll show the different options here. You can also just have a free text value or a true false, a Boolean value as well. Then we get to the data sets. So as I mentioned earlier, you can switch out data sets if you wish to, try something new with the model. So by that, you can just click on the edit button, and that should load up the data catalog, which has actually saved my search here. So if I wanted to, I could click select and then hit confirm, and use this water model data set with this energy demand model. Obviously, that's not going to work, so I'm not going to confirm that, but that will be how you change it if you want. And that if you make some changes and you realize, oh no, I don't actually want to do that, I want the original data sets back, you can just press the use default button and it'll go back to whatever the model owner has said. These are the data sets that will guaranteed work with my model. So the next step type is the publish step type. So this allows you to take the outputs of these models. So here we take the outputs of all 5 of these models and we publish them back into the data catalog. So again, first field is the step name, just to allow you to identify it. Then we ask you to fill out all of the metadata. So this is a subset of the metadata that we require you to fill in order to upload your own data set. Because we're uploading this as part of a workflow, some of the metadata fields are already automatically generated and filled in for you. So we'll just skip over this. If you want to see anything more about this form, as I say, there's detailed coverage on the YouTube channel for this form. So then we get down to actually specifying which files that you want to publish as part of this. So here we're taking all of the outputs from the energy transport module and we're publishing them back into the data catalog. So the way this particular workflow works is all of the outputs get moved along from model to model to model. And so we only need to collect all of the outputs from the final model step when we want to publish back into the catalog. And then I thought I would just quickly run through creating a visualization step to show you that it is quite easy to just create and add steps to this workflow. So here, if I just wanted to create a visualization, so the demo after me will be a demonstration of the drag and drop tool that will be coming up in a future release. Currently, we allow you to create a Jupyter Notebook visualization where we'll load all of the data files into that notebook, and you can do some Python or some R to produce a visualization of your choice. So one of the options here is because the visualization step will actually publish your data back into the catalog as well, just so that it can get access to that data. You also need to provide the metadata, the same metadata. So one of the options available to you is if you don't want to fill out the metadata form every single time in your workflow, or you might want to change it depending on the inputs, you can actually use a metadata file from one of your models. But I don't have that for one of these models, so I would have to fill in the form with a load of values, but I'm not going to do that just to save a little bit of time. But again, once the form's filled out, you have to specify the specific files that you want to visualize. And this works in exactly the same way as the publish step. You select the step that you want to take the files from. So here, the energy transport module, and you give a path to within that module of what files you want to include. So this is just a simple way of us saying we want all of the files and folders below the output folder. You can also just specify a single star to allow you to just get all of the files but not the folders. So yeah, that's this workflow. So I'll just quickly go back to the main workflow catalog. Down below here, you can see a list of all of the workflows that have been run on DAFNI, and you can see that this workflow has run successfully. You get another view with icons for each of the steps. If this had failed, it would have a little warning symbol on the step that failed to let you know that that is the specific step that has failed. And then you can click on these steps as well if you want to see the specific configuration that you passed into this step. So again, you can see the list of parameters and the list of data sets that were used in this step. And then just to round off the demo, I'd just like to go back to the data catalog and just show that I have run this workflow and it has produced some outputs that have gone back into our data catalog. All of the metadata is there, all of the data files are there. And yeah, I think now I'm handing over to Martin to visualize not this data set, but a data set very similar to this.